It's really hard to know when the media is overhyping things and the story may not be that bad. They're trying to get clicks. But we have the story now from the New York Post. Expert warns coronavirus could infect 60% of the world's population. There's 7.8 billion people on this planet. This seems outrageous. So take it all with a grain of salt. But considering the coronavirus news has continually gotten worse, we'll entertain this for a little bit, and we have many other updates. But with a 60% infection rate, the worst case scenario with a 2% mortality rate is around like 90 some odd million people dying from this virus. And even if we go down to a milder 1%, cut that number in half, we're still dealing with 40 or so million people who could lose their lives because of this virus. So I want to stop and say for the millionth time, take it all with a grain of salt. But I got to admit, when I first saw that this expert warned it could reach 60% of the population, I did not believe it. I checked a few other sources, and sure enough, it's being reported by several outlets. And this is the New York Post. So let's read the story and then cover some of the more recent news. And I feel like, I got some more bad news after this. It's just, take care of yourselves, everybody. The Post reports the coronavirus epidemic could grip about 2/3 of the world's population if the deadly bug is not controlled, a top public health official said, as another expert predicted that cases in China could peak this month and fade away by April. I'm going to stop. Why didn't they lead with that? Top expert says coronavirus will peak in China and then fade away because one is more sensational than the other. And that's what the media does. So take it all into consideration. But I think it's better to overreact than underreact. I got to be honest. So at least in this instance, it's better that people might be shocked into taking action to protect themselves than for all of us to just say, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'll mention this because I mentioned it before. There's a concern that because we underreacted with SARS and MERS and these other flus, more people lost their lives than should have. So at least when it pertains to this, I think it is fair to lead with the more important, the more shocking statistic if it means people will take it seriously. And again, I'm not saying we should mislead the public by no means. If I have a choice to say, prepare yourself, take it seriously, or don't worry about it, nothing's going to happen. Okay. Erring in the side of the middle a little bit, but we have seen this get worse. So let's take precautions. Professor Gabriel Lung, chair of public health medicine at Hong Kong University, told The Guardian he was examining the implications of the World Health Organization's Monday warning that cases of the coronavirus spreading outside China are the tip of the iceberg. Most experts believe that each person infected can go on to transmit coronavirus to about 2.5 other people, creating an attack rate of 60 to 80%, Lung told the reporter. 60% of the world's population is an awfully big number. Yeah, we're talking about billions infected. Even with a general fatality rate as low as 1%, a possibility once milder cases are taken into account, there could still be a massive global death toll. He said, yes, we're talking about 40 some odd million people. Meanwhile, experts are attempting to map out the likely course of the illness, Long told The Guardian. Is 60 to 80% of the world's population going to get infected? Maybe not. Maybe this will come in waves. Maybe the virus is going to attenuate its lethality because it certainly doesn't help it if it kills everybody in its path, because it will get killed as well. This is something I mentioned before. Viruses that kill the host too quickly are not successful viruses. They fade away very fast because they can't infect people as fast as the people are dying. If you've played Plague Inc., and I mean this seriously, you understand this. If the mortality rate is too high, not only do humans overreact, but they can't spread the virus. Health officials are also attempting to determine whether restrictions put in place in Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak, as well as other cities, have made a positive impact. Have these massive public health interventions, social distancing, and mobility restrictions worked in China, Lung asked? If so, how can we roll them out, or is it not possible? Meanwhile, Zhong Nation, 83, China's foremost medical advisor on the outbreak, told Reuters that the numbers of new cases are dipping in some parts of the country. The epidemic may peak this month and then plateau, he said. Now I want to go back to that earlier point where they said, maybe this would peak by April. Well, at least this guy is working for China. I don't trust them. As far as we know, there have been reports and studies from American professionals at, say, Johns Hopkins University, arguing that China is misleading us about what's really going on. Or more importantly, people aren't reporting milder cases, which means it could be spreading worse than we realize. Quote, I hope this outbreak or this event may be over in something like April, said Zhong, an epidemiologist known for his role in combating a surge of SARS in 2003. But World Health Organization Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus warned that the epidemic was far from over. With 99% of cases in China, this remains very much an emergency for that country, but one that holds a very grave threat for the rest of the world, Tedros told researchers gathered in Geneva on Tuesday. A total of 1,017 people have died of coronavirus in China, where a total of 42,708 cases have been reported, which means it could be substantially higher. Johns Hopkins said maybe 10 times higher than this. Only 319 cases have been confirmed in 24 other countries and territories outside mainland China. The World Health Organization and Chinese health officials said one person has died in Hong Kong, with another in the Philippines. Okay, so maybe we're going to take action to quarantine this. Maybe we will stop the spread in its tracks because we're paying attention, right? I'm sorry, I've got some more bad news because never underestimate human ineptitude. First U.S. evacuee from China to have coronavirus mistakenly released from hospital. And if what they're saying is true about the infection rate, it stands to reason this just made things extremely bad. It's gone from worse to even worse. It just keeps escalating. So please, I would rather we overreact to this than underreact, because this is a major screw up. And I think if we were taking it very, very seriously more than we are now, maybe this wouldn't have happened. The Post reports the first U.S. evacuee from China confirmed to have the coronavirus was mistakenly released from a San Diego hospital as a result of a botched test result that showed he was not infected, according to reports. The patient was evacuated last week on a flight from the epicenter city of Wuhan and taken to UC San Diego Health, where he was placed in isolation along with 3 others after showing possible symptoms of the virus. After an initial test by the CDC showed they did not have the virus, they were released Sunday and returned to the 14-day federal quarantine at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, UC San Diego Health said in a statement Monday. This morning, CDC officials advised San Diego County Public Health that further testing revealed that one of the 4 patients tested positive for the novel coronavirus. They've given it a name now. They're calling it COVID. The name now is COVID-19, so we can call it that. They say the confirmed positive patient was returned to UC San Diego Health for observation and isolation until cleared by the CDC for release, it added. Another person at Miramar also was hospitalized Monday and was being tested for the coronavirus, bringing the total from Miramar quarantine to 8. Both patients are doing well and have minimal symptoms, UCSD said. I don't know, man. I mean, this stuff is getting pretty worrying, but I got to admit, it's also getting pretty tiring. Is this going to be another overhyped, nonsensical illness? I mean, it's already surpassed SARS. And I can only say it for the billionth time. Perhaps it doesn't matter whether it's going to be the worst or it's going to be not that big of a deal. Perhaps it doesn't matter if it's isolated in China or spreading. We just need to take care of ourselves. And if our quarantines are doing things wrong and letting people out, I kind of feel like it's pointless to a certain degree. They're saying now, I don't know if you saw the segment I did yesterday, the incubation period can be 24 days, meaning people could be asymptomatic for weeks and they could get released and it doesn't matter. Perhaps we can't track this like we thought we could. I did an interview with a higher up at the CDC several years ago. And the scary reality is we don't think we can handle an epidemic or a pandemic. We don't. We think we can do certain things to protect certain people. And in certain circumstances, we can mitigate the damage. But most people, at least the ones I talked to, said we can be prepared, but because we don't know the natures of the illness, because the illnesses can vary, there's only so much we can do in prevention. And then it's made worse when mistakes are made. I can't understand why they would release someone even from a quarantine, even if the test said you were fine, because of the incubation period being 2 weeks or with a 24-day incubation. The university said in an email statement to the San Diego Union Tribune that the infected evacuee did not just stroll out of the hospital to head back to Miramar. The patient left UC San Diego Health the same way they arrived, with all precautions taken. The patient was wearing a mask per CDC instruction. The federal marshals transported the patient while wearing protection. It was unclear how long the patient was at the base before officials realized that the person's negative test result was actually positive. The statement indicates The patient was discharged from the hospital Sunday and returned Monday, but specific times were not specified. The San Diego case, the 7th in California, is the 13th to be confirmed in the U.S. 11 of those cases have been confirmed in people who recently traveled to Wuhan. The other two cases of the other two are cases of person-to-person transmission. By the end of Monday, 1,016 had officially died of the coronavirus, and the infections grew to about 42,000. Okay, man. What we're learning, or what we think we know, is that it can be transmitted by touching contaminated surfaces. That means skin contact, surface contact transmission. There are concerns that it can enter the mucous membranes through your eyes, which means the masks might not do anything. If they really do think it's this bad and it's going to get to 60%, it is not helped by the fact that people aren't taking it seriously, or that mistakes like this could even be possible. I can't believe, one of the first things I said was, does it make sense to airlift U.S. citizens out of a quarantined city? This is what I'm worried about. This is exactly the scenario I was concerned about. The answer is, in my opinion, no. I'm sorry, man. I think we should be here for Americans, but maybe we shouldn't be airlifting you out of a quarantine, bringing you back here, because it opens the door for Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong. Do not create the opportunity. Let people stay in Wuhan for at least, until we know things have cleared up. But perhaps, I don't know. I don't understand why they would airlift people out. We have two more stories here, and we're going to give some praise to our men and women protecting our border. The coronavirus has been named. World health chiefs label the deadly SARS-like disease COVID-19 6 weeks after the outbreak that killed more than 1,000 people. That's basically the general news for this story. We've got a name. It is now called COVID. You get it. I mentioned it. Fine. But now we've got some good news, if it matters. Border agents seize bag of dead birds from passenger traveling from China. Now, whatever this bag of dead birds is for, I have no idea. I'm not entirely convinced that dead birds can transmit the coronavirus, or if it even matters they stopped it, but I can tell you this. This story is getting a lot of play. It may be overhyped. Things like this may happen all the time, so take it with a grain of salt as per usual, but at least this makes me a little bit more confident that we've got some vigilance among our border guards. If they're going to notice a product, even in packaging, that looks legit, and they're going to stop it, perhaps we can prevent the spread of the coronavirus, or at least mitigate the damage better than we can expect. The Post reports, a bag of dead birds was discovered by U.S. Customs and Border Patrol inside a passenger's luggage who traveled from China to Washington, D.C., authorities said. The dead birds were packaged in a bag that had cartooned images of a dog and a cat. Okay, I got to stop here. I was wrong. It seems that they think this is supposed to be cat food or something. It looks sealed. It looks like the top is even sealed. But maybe this is an instance of someone putting the dead birds in a different bag. They say the dead birds were packaged in a bag that had cartoon images of a dog and a cat. U.S. Customs said in a statement, workers from the agency seized the birds at Dulles Airport near D.C. on January 27th from a passenger arriving from Beijing. The passenger said the birds were cat food, and he was planning to bring them to Maryland after his flight. The birds are not allowed into the United States out of fear they may spread avian flu. So not even coronavirus, but hey, that's what CBP is all about. And don't forget that we've heard from AOC saying she wants to completely break up CBP and ICE. The birds were destroyed by incineration with approval from the USDA, authorities said. Customs and Border Protection agriculture specialists continue to exercise extraordinary vigilance every day in their fight to protect our nation's agriculture and economic prosperity from invasive species and animal diseases, said Casey Durst, Director of Field Operations for the agency's Baltimore field office. This kind of stuff happens all the time, I would imagine. So I don't want to pretend like this might be more important than literally any other day CBP catches and seizes something. And I think it's fair to say one of the only reasons the media is reporting it, considering it happened, 2 weeks ago, is that coronavirus has become substantially scarier. So I can recognize that, but I can still say, hey, it looks like our men and women on the border are doing their job. And you can see that they've probably seized things the media hasn't reported, which could be or are infected with coronavirus. And so long as we have legitimate border protections, we can prevent these things. This coronavirus scare is probably one of the best examples of why we need ICE and why we need CBP. If the Democrats on the left stop I should say the progressives, far left, but yes, many of the Democrats are talking about reform too. If they stopped hyper-focusing on singular issues about, say, like refugees or downtrodden families and focus on the broader aspect of what these law enforcement agencies do, you would see that they go after smuggling, people bringing in illicit products or invasive species, criminals trying to enter. In this time with the coronavirus, I'm grateful that we have border protections that can check for this and prevent people from bringing in a bag of dead birds, because who knows what else might happen. There is a video going around claiming that a man was trying to spread the virus, that he spit on his hand and then wiped it on an elevator. There are people who intentionally want to do these things, and we have seen people do these things in the past. We need people to protect our borders because I assure you, there are probably some people who know they're infected and want to sow chaos and will absolutely try and come here when they are. If we have good border security, we can protect people from diseases. But these arguments, these points, often are never brought up when it comes to these debates. They only ever talk about putting kids in cages or some other extreme position. I'm sorry, man, we've got a serious crisis with the coronavirus. And if they're really saying 60% of the population could get it, what we need right now is to redouble our efforts protecting our borders. And so should every other country, because we don't want this thing to get worse. People will die. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. at youtube.com/Timcast. It is a different channel, and I will see you all there.